Welcome class. Today we're going to discuss using schema. First thing we want to go over with is our Common Core standard for the schema. So here we go. For this we will make connections between the text of a story or drama and a visual or oral representation of the text, identifying where each version reflects specific descriptions and directions in the text. So the whole idea in behind schema is to take information that you know already from any source, that while you're reading, the new material, you take the old material and make that connection so that you get better understanding and enjoy the story that much the more. I.e., we use schema literally every day of our lives. We'll sit there and say, we'll eat something, we'll use schema when we describe it. Somebody say, what's that taste like? You say, tastes like chicken. If you didn't have the schema in behind that, you wouldn't have known to say it tastes like that. So it's basically using past information and connecting it to the now. So, for instance, again, I mentioned food. We use schema when we watch movies because we'll describe, how close things are the same in other movies. I was discussing the other day the Jurassic Park movies, some of the things that were in the same in them, how some of the different storylines went along. It's like, this does the same thing in the other movie too. What is it? It's that connection between two different things. When I was younger, they had a TV show that was Pokey and Gumby. It's a little weird show, but either way. There's these little characters about that tall. One was green, one was orange. And they went around these Native Americans and they found this thing that the Native Americans believed in to bring rain. It was called Kachina. It was some sort of spirit they believed in. Years later, I'm in 4th grade, and we're studying different Native American tribes, and we studied the Hopi Indians. I didn't realize that, but they began to talk about, this blue star spirit that gives them rain. I said, wait a second, that's Kachina. What was it? It was that connection from something I had seen before coming to the now. So we use schema in everything. We use it when we read. We read different books and things just stick out to us that we remember, and we use those things. So again, schema deals with making connections to the story that we're reading. Okay. Give me just 1 second to bring up my information. So, when we discuss schema, again, it's any little thing that we use that's going to make that connection, that we're going to remember something and come back to our remembrance. For instance, even from my own personal self, reading the Bible sometimes, I'll have schema kick in. I read about one time where Jesus talked about, the harvest is great, but the laborers are few. And I thought about that, and it instantly triggered in my mind that schema back to when I worked on the farm. That's what had happened. I had seen, even on a small farm that we had a lot of workers because there was a lot of labor to get done. And just the same, Jesus was talking about something different, but he used those things as sort of like a schema to bring to your remembrance. He called them parables, and they was stories, but it was all that schema to make connections between two different things. That, you took something that was natural and connected it with the spiritual, and you gained a knowledge out of it. And just the same, it goes with, different things in life, different books you read, textbooks, school books, all of it's that connection. If you can make the connection between two different things, there's easier ways to remember it. But when there's no connection, it's hard to keep it in your mind and keep it, locked up in your memory. But when you can make that connection with something, you're like, oh wait, I remember that. That's where you make that connection and long-term memory kicks in. All right. So, in making connections, there's basically three different forms of making a connection or a schema. One, you have text to text, which is when you make a connection between something you are reading right now and something you've read before. It could be a book from school, a fictional or non-fiction, either one. You be reading it, and instantly you have schema kicking you. I remember something from, I read this one time. I remember that. When I was in school, we talked about a lot on World War II, I think my 5th grade year, and we read parts of Anne Frank, or Anne Frank, whichever one you want to pronounce it as. And there was information I got from that, and then when we read about it later on in history class, in my probably 7th or 8th grade year, U.S. history, there was already that schema in my head of what I'd read about with Anne Frank, things I didn't realize. And when I read in my history book, those connections came between the concentration camps and everything that Nazi Germany had did at that time. So there was those connections because it was old texts I had read before and new texts came together and made that connection, and I could remember those things better. So that's text to text. We have text to world, which is a connection that you make between anything that you're reading and the world around you right then at that moment. So you could have a text to world. I can't even talk. Connection with current events. Again, history that's going on right now or that you know about, movies, commercials, different little things that just makes that connection with you that you remember. They make commercials nowadays to a point that you're going to remember them. They want them to be slick and, easily remembered because you want that schema to kick back in when it's needed. Smokey the Bear, only you can prevent forest fires. As simple as that is, but when you're out in the woods, you don't think about it. But then, schema kicks in as to why Smokey the Bear said, only you can prevent a forest fire. So, when you're reading something and you start to read, next thing you know, you make that connection to something that's going on right now or something you've seen before in a movie or something, and instantly you have that connection and you can better piece it together. And even some books have movies made after them. When I was younger in high school, I read parts of Jurassic Park, the Michael Crichton book. And, for me personally, I sort of referenced the movie in some of the parts when I'd seen it when I was a lot younger. And when I could do that, I could, visually represent those things. And I made those connections. That was my text-to-world connection. And then you have also text-to-self connections, which are those connections that you make from the text and anything personal in your life. Something that means something to you or just something in life that's happened to you. You can read about anything and it's just something in your life that just clicks out to you. It's like, wow, I know what he's talking about there. And then you make that connection better. If that makes sense. I have a poster for you all to look at. It'll be put up here soon. I'm going to have it on the screen in just a second, but this will be printed out for the bulletin for you all to see. It has pictures just to simplify what I meant by saying, text to self, text to text, and text to world. Those different little areas. So, with those things, with that knowledge, you take any of them and put them where you need it to be, and schema is made. And when schema is made, knowledge is brought forth. There's remembering what you learned. And like I said, it doesn't have to be something big, but something simple. But all it takes is that simple little connection to where you can get into something bigger. But it all starts with having that either text to text, text to self, text to world connections that's going to make the schema to fit. I hope this has helped you. Use schema. Use what you know to make better connections for what you're trying to learn. It'll make things a lot simpler. Thank you very much. Have a great day.